What if I told you that the most powerful person in the room is often the quietest one? The one who doesn't need to announce their achievements, who doesn't seek the spotlight, who carries an invisible strength that draws people in without saying a word. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why true humility might be the most misunderstood superpower of our generation, and how a simple shift in perspective could completely transform your relationships, your career, and your inner peace. Let me start with a story that changed everything I thought I knew about humility. There was a man who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body. Yes, you heard that right. Physical wounds that bled, that caused excruciating pain, that defied medical explanation for 50 years. This man performed miracles that drew millions of people from around the world. He could read souls, predict future events, and people witnessed supernatural phenomena in his presence. His name was Padre Pio, and he's one of the most documented miracle workers in modern history. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. Despite all of this, despite the stigmata, despite the miracles, despite the extraordinary gifts that made him unlike anyone else on earth, Padre Pio consistently referred to himself as the greatest of sinners. He would say he was unworthy, that he deserved nothing, that any good that came through him was purely God's work. When people praised him, he deflected. When they called him a saint, he protested. When they traveled thousands of miles just to meet him, he saw himself as simply a servant doing what he was called to do. Now you might be thinking, that's just religious humility, right? That's just what holy people are supposed to say. But what if I told you that this wasn't just spiritual rhetoric? What if this mindset, this genuine perspective of humility, despite possessing extraordinary abilities, is actually the secret that unlocked those very abilities in the first place? Think about it. We live in a world that screams the opposite message at us every single day. Post your wins on social media. Build your personal brand. Make sure everyone knows what you've accomplished. Hustle culture tells us to grind and then broadcast that grind. LinkedIn has become a highlight reel of achievements. Instagram is a carefully curated museum of our best moments. We're taught that if you don't promote yourself, you'll be left behind. If you don't let people know how great you are, someone else will take your spot. And yet, there's something that feels hollow about all of it, isn't there? Something exhausting about the constant need to prove ourselves, to one-up each other, to make sure our accomplishments are seen and validated. We feel it in our bodies, that tension when someone else succeeds, and we wonder if that diminishes our own success. We feel it in our minds, that nagging voice that says we're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not being recognized enough. Padre Pio understood something profound that our modern world has forgotten. He lived by a principle captured in his own words. Humility and purity are the wings which carry us to God and make us almost divine. Let me break that down, because it's not just beautiful poetry. It's a practical formula for human excellence. Humility and purity as wings. Not as chains that hold us down, not as weaknesses that limit us, but as wings that lift us up. They carry us towards something greater than ourselves. They make us, as he says, almost divine. Not divine in the sense of becoming God, but divine in the sense of operating at our highest human potential, connected to something transcendent, free from the ego traps that keep most people stuck in cycles of anxiety, comparison, and dissatisfaction. But what does this actually mean for you and me? How do we apply this in a world where humility seems like a competitive disadvantage? How do we practice genuine humility without becoming a doormat, without underselling ourselves, without getting overlooked for the promotion or the opportunity? Let's get practical. Real humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's not about denying your talents or achievements. It's about understanding their proper context. When something good happens in your life, when you accomplish something significant, the humble response isn't to dismiss it or pretend it doesn't matter. The humble response is gratitude. Listen to how this sounds. Instead of saying, "I'm so talented, I nailed that presentation," you say, "I'm grateful I had the opportunity to present and that the team responded well." Instead of, "I'm the best in my department," you say, "I'm thankful to work with people who challenge me to grow." Do you hear the difference? You're not diminishing the achievement. You're actually elevating it by connecting it to something beyond just your ego. This is where most people get humility wrong. They think it means making yourself small, apologizing for your existence, hiding your light under a bushel. That's not humility. That's false modesty, and sometimes it's actually inverted pride. It's still all about you, just in a negative direction. True humility is freedom from the tyranny of self-obsession altogether. Padre Pio could perform miracles precisely because he wasn't performing for anyone. He wasn't trying to build a reputation. He wasn't collecting testimonials for his spiritual resume. He was simply present, available, and surrendered to being used for something greater than himself. And paradoxically, that's exactly what made him so powerful and magnetic. Now I want you to think about the most impressive person you've ever met in real life. Not a celebrity you've seen on TV, but someone you've actually interacted with. I'm willing to bet that one of their most striking qualities was their humility. They didn't need to tell you how accomplished they were. Their presence spoke for itself. They asked you questions. They listened genuinely. They made you feel important, not small. That's the paradox of true greatness. The greater someone actually is, the less they need to tell you about it. I've seen this principle play out in countless ways. I once worked with a CEO who had built a company from nothing to hundreds of millions in revenue. Do you know what he did in meetings? He asked questions. He admitted when he didn't know something. He gave credit to his team constantly. And you know what happened? People ran through walls for him. Not because he demanded it, not because he lorded his position over them, but because his humility created a culture where everyone felt valued and empowered. Compare that to another executive I encountered who had achieved far less but needed everyone to know about every small win, every decision they made, every insight they had. Their team was disengaged, turnover was high, and despite all the self-promotion, they eventually lost their position because they were so focused on looking good that they stopped actually being effective. Here's what I need you to understand. Humility is not weakness. Humility is clarity. It's seeing reality accurately without the distorting lens of ego. When you're humble, you can receive feedback without being defensive, because criticism isn't an attack on your identity. When you're humble, you can celebrate others' success without feeling threatened, because their win doesn't diminish you. When you're humble, you can admit mistakes quickly, because being right isn't more important than doing right. Let me give you some practical exercises you can start implementing today. First, practice saying thank you instead of explaining why you're good. When someone compliments your work, the humble response is simply, "Thank you, I appreciate that," not a 10-minute explanation of your process and qualifications. That's your ego trying to make sure they really understand how competent you are. Just say thank you and let the compliment land. Second, practice admitting when you're wrong immediately and without excuse. This is incredibly powerful and incredibly rare. Most people, when they make a mistake, either deny it, minimize it, or explain all the reasons why it wasn't really their fault. The humble person says, "You're right, I made a mistake. I apologize. Here's how I'll fix it." No drama, no defensiveness, just ownership and action. Do you know what happens when you do this consistently? People trust you more, not less. They see someone secure enough to be honest, someone more committed to solutions than to protecting their image. Third, make it a daily practice to recognize the contributions of others. Not in a fake performative way, but genuinely. When a project succeeds, who else was involved? Who supported you? Who gave you opportunities? Who taught you what you needed to know? Gratitude is humility in action. It's acknowledging that you didn't get here alone, that you're standing on the shoulders of others, that your success is interconnected with countless people and circumstances. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. If this video is resonating with you, if you're finding value in this perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It actually helps more people discover this content. And I'm genuinely curious how many of you are connecting with this message. Also, drop a comment and tell me about a time when someone's humility made a lasting impression on you. I read every comment, and I want to hear your stories. Now let's address the elephant in the room. You might be wondering, okay, this all sounds nice in theory, but doesn't humility hold you back in the real world? Don't you need to self-promote to get ahead? Isn't the squeaky wheel the one that gets the grease? Here's the truth that might surprise you. Genuine humility actually makes you more successful, not less. But it's a different kind of success. It's sustainable. It's built on solid relationships rather than self-promotion. It's rooted in actual competence rather than perceived competence. There's a concept called the confidence-humility paradox. Research shows that the most effective leaders score high on both confidence and humility simultaneously. They're confident in their abilities and direction, but humble about their limitations and their need for others. This isn't contradictory. It's integrated maturity. You can be confident in what you know while remaining humble about what you don't know. You can be confident in your strengths while remaining humble about the fact that you didn't create those strengths in a vacuum. Padre Pio embodied this perfectly. He was confident in God's power working through him, but humble about his own worthiness. He didn't doubt that miracles could happen. He doubted that he deserved to be the instrument. That combination is what made him both powerful and approachable, both extraordinary and relatable. Let's talk about what humility is not, because this is where a lot of confusion happens. Humility is not self-deprecation. It's not constantly putting yourself down or fishing for compliments by insulting yourself. That's actually just another form of self-obsession, just with a negative spin. True humility doesn't think about self constantly in either positive or negative terms. It's free to focus outward. Humility is not letting people walk all over you. It's not being a people pleaser who can never say no. It's not avoiding conflict or never standing up for yourself. In fact, Padre Pio could be quite firm when needed. He corrected people, he gave direct spiritual direction, he didn't tolerate disrespect or sacrilege. But he did it from a place of caring for their well-being, not from wounded ego. Humility is not hiding your talents or refusing opportunities. If you have a gift, you're supposed to use it to develop it, to offer it to the world. What humility does is change your relationship to that gift. Instead of, "Look what I can do," it becomes, "Look what can be done through me when I'm aligned with my purpose." Here's a practical framework you can use to cultivate genuine humility. I call it the 3-part humility practice, and it's based on Padre Pio's example and wisdom from various traditions. Part 1 is accurate self-assessment. This means getting brutally honest about both your strengths and your weaknesses without exaggeration in either direction. You're not the best or the worst. You're a human being with certain abilities, certain limitations, certain areas of growth. Spend time in honest self-reflection. What are you actually good at? What do you need to develop? Where do you consistently struggle? Write it down. Share it with a trusted friend or mentor who can give you honest feedback. This is humility as clarity, seeing yourself as you actually are. Part 2 is proper attribution. This means recognizing where your abilities came from. You didn't give yourself your natural talents. You didn't choose your family, your circumstances, your initial opportunities. Yes, you've worked hard to develop what you have, but you built on a foundation you received. Practice gratitude for your genetics, your mentors, your lucky breaks, the historical moment you were born into the people who believed in you. This isn't minimizing your effort. It's contextualizing it within a larger web of factors that all contributed to where you are. Part 3 is outward focus. This is where humility really lives. It's the practice of getting genuinely interested in other people, their stories, their struggles, their gifts. It's asking questions and actually listening to the answers. It's offering your skills in service of something beyond your personal advancement. It's finding meaning in contribution rather than just accumulation. This is what Padre Pio did daily. He spent hours hearing confessions, offering spiritual counsel, praying for people's needs. He wasn't thinking about his reputation. He was thinking about how he could help the person in front of him. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is changing your internal narrative from "I need to prove I'm valuable" to "I am valuable, and now I can offer that value freely." Do you feel the difference? The first statement comes from insecurity and leads to constant self-promotion and anxiety about how you're being perceived. The second statement comes from security and leads to generous contribution and peace about your place in the world. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I was obsessed with making sure people knew about my achievements. Every conversation was an opportunity to slip in some accomplishment, some credential, some proof that I belonged in the room. And you know what? People could smell it. They were polite, but they kept their distance. I wasn't building real relationships. I was building a personal brand, and it was exhausting. Then I had a mentor who told me something I'll never forget. He said, "You're trying so hard to be impressive that you're not being present. And presence is what actually impresses people." That hit me hard. I realized I was so focused on managing how others perceived me that I wasn't actually connecting with them. I wasn't asking about their lives, their challenges, their dreams. I was just waiting for my turn to talk about myself. So I tried an experiment. For 1 month, I made a rule: no talking about my achievements, unless directly asked, and even then, keep it brief. Instead, I would ask questions. I would listen. I would look for ways to be helpful. And something remarkable happened. People started seeking me out. They wanted to work with me. They recommended me for opportunities, not because I had promoted myself better, but because I had stopped promoting myself and started genuinely connecting. That's when I understood what Padre Pio meant about humility as wings. When you let go of the need to prove yourself, you actually become more of who you're meant to be. The energy you were spending on ego management becomes available for actual growth and contribution. You're lighter, freer, more creative, more present. That's what lifts you up. Here's another critical distinction. Humility doesn't mean you can't acknowledge your accomplishments. It means you hold them lightly. You can say, "Yes, I led that successful project," without making it the centerpiece of your identity. You can list your qualifications on a resume without your self-worth being dependent on whether you get the job. You can lose, fail, or be rejected without it destroying you because you know your value isn't determined by external validation. Padre Pio experienced tremendous suffering, both physical and spiritual. He was misunderstood, investigated by church authorities, restricted in his ministry for years. He could have become bitter. He could have pointed to his miracles as proof that the authorities were wrong. But he submitted, humbly trusted the process, and continued serving in whatever capacity was allowed. That's humility under pressure. That's the real test. How do you respond when you're criticized unfairly when someone else gets credit for your work? When you're passed over for the recognition you deserve? The ego wants to fight to set the record straight, to make sure everyone knows the truth. Humility says, "My value doesn't depend on other people getting it right. I know what I contributed. That's enough." This doesn't mean you never advocate for yourself. There's a time to speak up about your contributions, especially in professional contexts where decisions are being made. But there's a way to do it from humility rather than ego. It sounds like, "I want to make sure my role in the project is clearly understood so we can replicate the success. Here's what I contributed." Not, "Everyone needs to know that I'm the reason this succeeded." Let me share one more practical tip that's been transformative for me. At the end of each day, I do what I call a gratitude audit. I write down 3 things that went well and identify everyone who contributed to those things. Not just the obvious contributors, but really thinking through the chain of causation. If I had a productive meeting, who scheduled it? Who taught me the skills I used? Who created the calm environment I worked in? This practice trains your brain away from "I did this" toward "This was made possible by many factors, and I'm grateful to be part of it." Now, as we're getting near the end of this video, I want to make sure you don't miss the most important insight. The point of humility isn't just to be a better person or to be more likable, although those are nice side effects. The point of humility is freedom. Freedom from the exhausting tyranny of ego maintenance. Freedom from comparison and competition. Freedom from the anxiety of needing to prove yourself constantly. Freedom to simply be present and respond to life from your authentic self rather than your defended self. Padre Pio was free. Despite the wounds, despite the suffering, despite the extraordinary burden of his gifts, he was free. And that freedom radiated from him in a way that transformed everyone who encountered him. People didn't just witness miracles. They encountered freedom and they wanted it for themselves. You can have that freedom too. It starts with a simple decision to stop building your life around your ego's demands and start building it around something greater. For Padre Pio, that something greater was God. For you, it might be service, creativity, love, truth, beauty, or whatever higher value calls to you. The key is that it's not centered on protecting and promoting yourself. Here's your homework, and I'm serious about this. For the next 7 days, try this practice. Every time you're tempted to correct someone about something small, to make sure they understand how smart or capable you are, to mention your accomplishment or credential, pause. Just for a moment. Ask yourself, is this necessary, or is this my ego seeking validation? If it's ego, let it go. Just let the moment pass without asserting yourself. Notice what happens. Notice how it feels. Notice how people respond to you. I predict you'll discover something surprising. You'll find that people are actually more drawn to you, not less. You'll find that conversations become richer because you're listening more than performing. You'll find that your own mind becomes quieter because you're not constantly monitoring and managing how others perceive you. You'll get a taste of that freedom, and once you experience it, you won't want to go back. Before you click away, I want to invite you to take 2 quick actions. First, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We dive deep into these timeless principles of human excellence, and I promise every video is crafted to give you practical wisdom you can use immediately. Second, share this video with one person who you think needs to hear this message. Maybe it's someone who's struggling with comparison or insecurity. Maybe it's someone whose humility has inspired you. Maybe it's just someone you care about who's on a journey of growth. Send it to them. You never know how something like this might land at exactly the right moment. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's not denying your gifts. It's holding them lightly and offering them freely. It's not weakness. It's the strongest form of strength, the kind that doesn't need to flex or prove itself. It's confidence without arrogance, conviction without rigidity, achievement without ego. Padre Pio showed us that you can be extraordinary and humble simultaneously. In fact, he showed us that humility might be what makes extraordinary possible. The miracles flowed through him precisely because he wasn't blocking them with ego, wasn't trying to control them for his own glory, wasn't using them to build his reputation. He was simply available, surrendered, and grateful. That's the invitation for you today, to become available to your highest potential by surrendering the need to prove yourself and cultivating genuine gratitude for everything you've received. The wings of humility will carry you further than the engines of ego ever could, and the flight will be so much more peaceful. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being open to this message. And thank you for being on this journey of growth. I'll see you in the next video.